Actually, I'll go for not sharp. Just poke and stick. For you. You. And I have paper towel so I can do that. Okay. Move this over here. Let's see. Okay. I'm still just getting stuff set up. I've got, like, I already had all my tools. I just want to make sure I got all my stuff correctly. So, hey everybody. So this is the first time I'm doing taxidermy on Twitch. So, I am about to bring out a dead bird. It is an actual dead bird. So if this is not what you're here for, please, you know, leave now with my blessings. Have a great day. But there will be a dead bird right here. So if everybody's cool, I'm going to get this little quail out. It's very cute. Very dead. Come here, small friend. Alrighty. So, this is a little Chinese painted quail. And just like all common names, there's like a dozen common names. So, if you Google king quail, they'll come up. Chinese painted quail, masked quails, there's a couple of them. Button quail, if it's button space quail, then you get these guys. If it's button quail one word, that's a completely different group of birds who have some visual similarities but are different. So, common names. I actually meant to look up the scientific name for these guys and I never got around to it. And so, oh hey! Good to see you guys! Thanks for coming by! So, button quail are cool. This is aviculture. So instead of having like a little dead parrot, you know, or obvious pet, this was a pet. It was well loved. She was well loved, and she died kind of unexpectedly this spring. So her previous owner was kind enough to donate her to this. So this little bird lived a good life, died of something birdish, and is now here. So I've got a couple interesting things. Anytime I have a specimen, I try to just check it out for anything weird. This one, unsurprisingly, has weird toes. Captive birds get weird toes. I don't know. Like, wild birds don't, captive ones do. So I'll try to hold this up to probably this camera to see these absolutely bizarro toes. Alright. But, like, you can see there's a weird growth on this one, and the nail's, like, super long, and on this foot, this toe is just missing. Like, weird toes. I don't know. You get weird toes on captive birds. I think they're just so lazy. They don't take care of their feet. Because, yeah, that's a growth. That's not going to come off. So, whatever. Not going to hurt anything. Very proud of this little bird. It's not excessively poopy. So, whatever killed it was not an intestinal disorder. It's got some brand new feathers growing on its head. So that might come up later. If you see feathers fall off all the time. Oh man, holding my little bird up to the camera means the camera's all out of focus. Hopefully it'll figure it out in a second. But for now I will focus on this camera if I need to show you guys anything else up close. I can tell that this bird was ill though because I can feel its keel. So humans, our sternum is like this flat thing on our chest. Birds, it's shaped like this and looks like the keel of a ship, ergo it's their keel. But it's a giant anchor for their huge flight muscles. So yeah, this little guy wasn't feeling well when she died, and I can say she, with some confidence, button quail or king quail, or again whatever we're going to call these, are sexually dimorphic, and so although she does have a white chin. Okay, confidence gone. Meh, I don't know what it is. I could go digging for gonads. Unfortunately, they keep their gonads back by their kidneys inside their torso, so I'm not going to figure that out for some time. So, not going to worry about it. Okay. So, before I get started on her... Man, camera! Still out of focus. There's some focus. Whoop. Well, hopefully I'll figure out. Get my scalpel together. For anybody who has never actually assembled a scalpel before, you gotta do it right. And so every scalpel blade has a angled top. And you can see on the handle, whoop, there we go, the angle is matched, so you just have to put it in so that those match and click. There we go. So, boom. A safely applied scalpel. And I'm going to keep the scalpel blade wrapper because that's what I'll put the old blade in when I get rid of it so that it's not pointy. Well, I mean, it's still pointy, but it's protected. Okay. So, birds are all weird. Birds have the biggest necks in the world, so, like, this little bird is, you know, it's a quail, so it's quail-shaped. It's this little egg-shaped body, but has a ginormous neck. Like, that's all bird neck. So I actually want to start down here so I can feel that this is the top of its breastbone, and I'm actually going to slice it open along that breastbone. So this is the part where I really wanted this other camera to be functioning. Maybe I should try moving it. I don't have a cover. Nah, we're just going to let it go because you guys can probably see the cellophane that's on my keyboard. I don't want to be grabbing other things in my environment and putting them over here. Oh, hey, thank you, moderator. Glad for the update. So I will just have to do with the fact that eventually this ancient camera will hopefully be able to find my desk again. Okay, so to get started, I have a container of water, obviously weirdly fuzzed out water. So I'll give you guys the before and after. So there is a very fluffy bird, and then I take my water, and just like parting your hair, like if you wet a comb and to do your hair, then you can actually get your hair to behave. I just have to wet my finger and move the fluff, and then boom, suddenly I can see the bird's entire chest. So how often do I change the scalpel blades? On a little bird like this, I won't. By the end, like when I was doing prep at the Field Museum, you like washed scalpels and stuff that like you're not supposed to do. Because I can kind of saw a way out if I really need to. So I will definitely not be bothering... Oh, that feels funny. With changing out scalpel blades this time around. If I'm doing a really big project, I have 2 or 3 times. Like if I'm doing a hawk, I probably have to change out 2 or 3 times. Or if I'm being fancy, I might have different shapes of scalpels. Like I like this shape. It's this... There, you can kind of see it against my shirt. It's this nice leaf-shaped blade. There's also ones that look more like X-Acto knives. They're really little ones. They all have different codes. This is a 10. 11s are nice too. 11s are ones that look more like X-Acto knives. 15s are really small and have a rounded edge, and they're nice. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to cut my dude open here. I am so bummed about this camera. Like, I'm sure it'll just snap into place, like... I wonder if it needs to see a face. Hello? Hello, camera. Nope, that didn't work. Alright. Well, I'll keep holding up to the little camera so you guys can see this. I wonder if I can do it. Move my water. Alright, so I've got my bare bird skin. So again, I haven't cut anything. This is just like what a bird looks like if you move its feathers out of the way. So that's just naked bird. And I'm basically starting from the top of the sternum, so you know, the little V-shaped pit at the top of your neck. Nah, I really can't do this so this camera can see. Well. Wow, his keel feels malformed. This is a weird small bird. Maybe it's just really young. Yeah, this one must have been pretty young. I did not quiz the owner on a lot of facts about this little bird. Need more water. Since you guys don't get to be here live and you don't get to experience all of the experiences, the current smell smells like that part of going up the subway stairs that smells vaguely of pigeon. So I will try to keep you guys updated with the various weird odors associated with this. Okay, so you can kind of see let me get my poking stick. I've started my incision here. So you can see how this is a little darker. So this is the actual exposed meat. The skin is transparent. And so there, I can move that aside a little bit. It hardly looks different when you cut it open. Obviously, it would feel very different for the bird. There, that's a better angle. And so, yeah, I've made a little bit of an incision so far. The skin is so easy to move aside. And I'm just going to keep going. Oh, I think this guy has a full crop. For those unfamiliar, birds don't chew their food. They have no teeth. Well, hopefully you guys are familiar with that. And so one of the mechanisms that they have to deal with that is they have a little pouch in their throat called their crop, where they snarf down their food, super fast, and it sits in the crop first and gets mixed with first stage digestive fluids. And in some birds, they also have crop stones where they'll partially grind it up, and gizzards and things like that. Yeah. Wow, that's a weird shaped keel. I don't know how well you guys can see. There's like a dip? I don't know. This shouldn't be flat. This should be like hump shaped. So I wonder if this little guy is broken or if it's a birth defect. I don't know. That feels weird. Anyway, we'll find out. Okay. So I'm going all the way to the bottom of the keel, which is still going. Little quail are mostly keel. I freaking swear. So imagine if your breastbone went down to your waist. That's basically what we're looking at here. As you can see that central line, that's the keel, that's the breastbone, going like the whole way down. So... I came for taxidermy, staying for forensics. It's a lot of it, because the specimens you get, you don't always know the whole story. I love trying to figure this stuff out. Okay, so I've got it open, and you guys can see I'm like, this is no effort. I'm just moving the skin out of the way. There's jokes in the lab sometime about how do the birds just not fall apart in life, like pure gumption, I guess. Because their tissue is barely on there. So anybody who's ever cooked chicken at home, you know how you can just like peel the raw chicken skin right off of the meat? You might have to tug a little bit, but it just comes off. Same thing. Oh, this guy's molting. I say that with authority. We'll see if you guys can see this. Okay, my angle, sorry. Okay, there you are. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, so poke and stick. You guys can see here. My angles are terrible. Having everything be mirrored is totally awkward, and I am a totally awkward person. Anyway, there's little black specks under the skin, visible on the inside of the skin, here down by my fingertips here. Those are the blood supplies that are attached to the brand new feathers. So once a feather finishes growing, the blood supply discontinues, and then it's just a feather, and it can fall out, and it's not a big deal. When it's growing, it's actually attached to a blood supply, and it's a real bummer if it gets ripped out or broken, because then the bird bleeds a whole bunch, which is a really scary thing if you own a pet bird. I mean, you can take care of it. It's basically like having a fingernail get ripped out of the fingernail bed, where it's like super painful, but you're not going to die from it. Okay. So yeah, this must be a young bird, which again makes it weird that it just up and died, but we might see something from that. Because its owner was telling me that she was very surprised and sad to discover her quail was just laying there dead one morning. And birds Little prey animals will generally hide the fact that they're sick because they don't really want, predators to realize that they're easier prey than anybody else. And so, unfortunately, your pet bird will try to hide the fact it doesn't feel well from you, not understanding that you'll take it to the vet. So, there. I did not get any tweezers out, so I'm going to grab a set of tweezers. Let's go for some basic ones. I thought I did, but I can't find them. Oh, man. You know what? I'm moving this. No, I'm not moving it. Okay, the whole time I was getting set up, this camera was in focus. And now it's just decided that this is too hard. Silly camera. Alright. Wet my specimen some more. I gotta keep those feathers out of the way. I don't really want, my nice feathers stuck to raw meat. That's gross. So I keep trying to move those back. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut his head loose. So I'm not going to cut the whole... When I tell people I'm going to cut the head off, they always assume I'm, cutting through the skin, which is clearly not what I'm doing. So here I'm going to hold it up to the camera. So you can kind of see his little neck right up here, sticking up into the skin. I'm actually going to sever that pink column. So that's all the stuff. That's the stuff that matters. That's the vertebrae, that's his esophagus and his trachea, and all that good stuff. That white blob right here is probably the crop. I haven't cut it open to play with it, probably. And so I'm going to cut apart all the inside stuff and then take the rest of the skin off, just like I'm pulling the hoodie off of it. Let me try to get that loose. And obviously, if you guys have any questions or thoughts, including just reactions, please go nuts. Let me know. Because, yeah, I've got that neck really nicely... Whoop, so many feathers. Really nicely exposed. So what I want to do is... And this is something I learned from doing it wrong a lot. Is I actually want to pull out the neck enough that I can get behind it. So right now... It's still really attached to the skin. You can tell that bird is totally attached. I don't want that. I want to get totally behind it so it's a loose column of stuff. And then just chop the whole thing off in one go. Oh yeah, I don't know what's going on with this crop. Weird. Okay. Are the feathers stuck to the skin? Do you mean how they grow out of the skin, or just because they're wet and it's sticky? Chardon Mom. Oh, so if the feathers come off the skin. Sort of. Mostly no, sort of. So the feathers are on there really, really well. So if you've ever touched a fur coat or, a fur pelt that you can touch, the individual pieces of hair are on there pretty well. They have a root, just like when they're growing out of you. And that root is embedded in the skin. And obviously when you're touching something that's been totally tanned and preserved, they're really in there. All the tissue seizes up and holds those follicles in for roughly forever. I mean... You can knock the hair out, and obviously that's something you want to avoid, but you can. The feathers are the same way. The cuticle is in there, in the skin, and so I can easily pull the feathers out. I just pluck them out, but it will fight me. I can feel, the tug of trying to take it off. So I'll have, I've already had a couple feathers just, come off. So I'll always lose some, but I don't have to fight it. Now, if I have an important feather come off, classically the tail feathers, there's many things you can do that totally biff tail feathers. Those you glue back in because there's 12 of them, and you know exactly where they go, and you just put those little puppies back in there because it looks really obvious if you screw that up. Same thing with the wings. So I'm so biffed. I might have to take a break and see if I can fix that camera in a little bit, but I'll keep doing the super gross stuff fuzzed out. Maybe that's more comfortable for people. but we'll see. So, okay, so at this point, I have his neck separated. So you can see I got the tool completely behind it. And so now I know I can get that whole little column completely loose. And this is great because this means that I can deal with the super detailed parts of the head later. Heads are hard. Heads contain eyeballs and mouths and ears and all sorts of complicated stuff. And so that lets me get the mass of the body out first. And so then the skin is lighter and easier to work with. And then I can take my time with the detailed stuff later. So I'm going to chop his head off. I'll do that down here. I'm not going to make you guys watch up there, and I don't want it to land on my keyboard. In case there's gross. Alright, that's it. So it's now severed. Easy peasy. And so his adorable little head is now just hanging free. And I've got that little stump of the neck that I'm working down. So now I'm working downward. I'm going to cut his wings off next, same kind of idea. Then I'll cut his knees off, and then the very last thing I do is I cut his tail and his butt loose at the same time. So on birds, when we want to be scientific, we do not say butt. Well, I guess everybody has a butt. But it's a vent, or to be very specific, a cloaca. So we'll cut that stuff loose. Birds only have one opening at their base, as opposed to humans, which have 2 to 3. So let's get this low. So I'm skidding along his back right now to try and loosen this stuff up. And I've got this really great little probe, so you can kind of see it's got a very rounded, shiny little end. So I can poke at stuff and it's not just going to go busting through as quickly. It's still a steel implement, so, you know, it's not, the bird has no fight to him. But it lets me have a little bit of play. Man. And you guys can see, I mean, this little guy, especially now with the head off, that's raw chicken. Like, you could eat it. I am not going to eat something that just dropped dead on its own, and I also wouldn't eat someone's pet. I think that's a little weird. So, I'll not be eating it, but it's just raw bird. It feels exactly, if you've ever touched raw chicken, it feels exactly the same. It's same stuff. They evolved down very different paths. They're very different little dinosaurs, but, you know, a lot of similarities. Okay, so Chardon moms, talking about feathers. In terms of how many feathers are on their entire body, no. So Foghorn Leghorn has made jokes about how he has all of his feathers numbered for just such an occasion when someone blows them off in some hilarious act of cartoon violence. No, that's not the case. But in terms of the number of, like, flight feathers, the actual feathers that actually allowed the birds to maintain flight, those are in exact numbers. You know exactly how many wing feathers and tail feathers they have at any given time. And it's pretty consistent even across species. Not 100%, but for the most part. And so, yeah, you actually do know exactly how many wing feathers you're going to see. Which means if it's different, that's interesting. It either is damage. So, if they're low on feathers, something bad happened potentially. And if there's extras, that's fascinating and some weird mutation. All right, let me see if I can show you this armpit. Okay. You can kind of see it. This is so backwards. Okay, so I've got his arm here, and I'm trying to get... Man. There you can kind of see. Where's my poking stick? I want to get into his armpit, which is here. And so I'm basically cutting up through the armpit and up towards his shoulder to get that wing loose. And Chardon Mom, actually, because of the specifics of the number of feathers, you can actually judge the age of certain types of birds by looking at their wing feathers. So if you hold out their whole wing, so if you do that, you can see the primaries. Primaries are attached up here at the wrist. So these are your primary flight feathers, and these are your secondaries because they're attached on this lower arm. And you can age certain birds, hawks and things, Oh, hey, okay, and actually, no, that's just a broken feather. There's a notch down here. That's because that feather's broken off. But by which ones are shiny? So brand new feathers are going to be shiny and new looking. Old ones are going to be a little like matte and look old. And they lose their feathers in order because obviously if you're molting and you lose all of these, you can't fly. And then you get eaten or starve. And so they lose one at a time. And so you can judge where they are in their yearly cycle or whatever, or multi-year cycle, by which feathers are shiny versus matte. So that's not something like a little aviculture bird. They've been so screwed with by human breeding and things like that. You're not going to get anything that even. But if you're like banding hawks, yeah, you can totally, oh, I have a broad-wing hawk. Let's see which feathers are shiny. And that tells you a lot. Okay, so I'm going to cut this wing off and then go get the other one. So this... you can only sort of see. But anyway, I'm up through his shoulder. So that wing is off. Easy peasy. On to the next wing. Oh, that's interesting. It looks like there's damage. Okay, so Team Forensics, if you want to see something gross but cool. You see how the tissue here is a darker red? It's no longer the light pink or pinky tan that you have up at the top of the keel. It's this darker red back here. That's a little bit of blood underneath the muscle. It's interesting. Yeah, it's basically bad bruising. So button quail are excessively stupid. They're real cute, and they're real dumb. And it's possible that our little friend flipped out at some nighttime noise and bashed itself against the cage and died, which is super sad. I have a little bit of sawdust here, or really fine wood shavings. I'm putting that on my skin to start trying to dry it out. My feathers keep sticking, and I'm not really happy about that. So, you can also use cornmeal. Same idea, it just dries it out. And this is so sticky, so we're gonna see the tissue color less. So it's one of the reasons I didn't start with that, but the stickiness is driving me a bit nuts. So doing that, I'll move that guy over here. And there's another reason why I have a cover on my keyboard. Not that the raw bird wasn't enough to want to do that, but oh, how stupid are they? Okay, let me tell you about button quail and how dumb they are. So button quail are, again, they're aviculture, they're very popular, so the little guys that you meet like this, they're generations and generations and generations away from the wild. These are pets. And so at the Nature Museum, we had button quail that would get themselves into all sorts of trouble. They live out their entire lives in there. They hatch in that butterfly haven. They live there. They age. They die. And they'll still be surprised by the stuff that's just in there. So, like, there was one particular button quail I once rescued because he had fallen into the fountain. And, like, that fountain had always been there. And it doesn't have a ramp, and he was in the fountain. And I just happened to be walking by, and I don't know if I heard something or I saw the noise or the motion. I was like, oh, geez, little buddy, and got him out of there. They had to remove a plant that was growing in the butterfly haven. It had really pretty spiral-shaped seed pods, so they're like little corkscrew seed pods. And the button quail kept getting stuck in them. So it would just be like wrapped around its head, and it's like, I don't know what to do, and they just run around freaking out because there was a seed on them. So yeah, no, they're real dumb. They're very cute, but like, unlike having a pet parrot, which will love you, your parrot is your life partner, a button quail will just go and run away like every time. So I read on the internet that some people do have them hand trained so you can actually pick them up, and I've known some people had some luck with that. But they're largely just really dumb. Very cute. Very dumb. So, it does sound like the beginning of a joke. Okay, I'm cutting this other wing off. So, go right through there. Alright, so now I've got both wings loose. This guy is skinny. And I'm just pulling the skin off of the body as I go down. It just comes off real easy. This is where practice comes in. The skin is, as you guys saw, it's transparent. It's super thin. And so I could just like, just rip it and destroy it. So you have to, it comes off very easily unless you biff it. So it's a terrible way to describe how to do something, but there it is. Yeah, there's something up with his back. I don't like that. Not sure what's going on with that. Moving on. Alright, so that's like the torso is basically out. And his little hoodie is coming off. Definitely molting. I keep seeing those black spots. So he was... And I'm actually losing feathers too. I don't know if the camera would be able to pick this up. Yeah, you can kind of see that. So that's a feather that hadn't finished growing yet. And so it's in this hard little tube, which is why it doesn't look very fluffy. And so that's the pin feather. Pin because it's a hard little tube. And that has broken off as I'm, messing with this dead bird. Okay. So I'm down at his hips. So I need to, their hips. So I need to get down to the knees. And something that's really funny when working on these is, of course, you're turning a bird inside out, so everything looks real funny and weird, and you can lose track of where you are. So it's helpful to find the part that you can still identify. So in this case, here's a foot. And if I push that foot up, then I know where his knee is. I can see that flex, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's the knee. And then it just skins away. So now I have a little bird leg out. And so I can do that on the other side, where it's somewhat mysterious still. And then, whoo, just push the knee out. So using the outside of the bird to tell you what the inside of the bird's up to. Okay, so I'm going to cut those knees off. And there's a lot of ways to do this. There's some, colloquialism. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. Yeah. So in this case, you could do this a lot of different ways. I always start by cutting through the neck. A lot of other people prefer cutting through the base. There's pros and cons to all these different approaches. Alright, so that knee is off. Let me get this other knee. Alright. Pseudonym, sorry, the comment came through slow enough. Wrong about what? How many ways there are to skin something? Oh, yeah. Well, I'll cut at the base if I'm doing some other types of mounts and things like that, but yeah. So cutting at the base, instead of cutting the head off first, you dig down here and cut the cloaca off first. So you're digging around trying to find its butt, and then you go upward. It's not my favorite, but a lot of people swear by it. Okay, so at this point, I've got the whole dang chicken out. Like, that's just the whole little torso. And it's being, the skin is now left hanging onto its tail and its vent. And I have exposed, and you can oh yeah, look at those. Okay, you can see these perfect little beans right here. These little guys. These are the preen glands. And they're just fantastic on this little bird. So you're probably familiar with the term of birds preening. So to preen is to, like, adjust your feathers, or for a human, just, make yourself cuter. Birds preen, and so not only are they literally putting their feathers in whatever position they want them to be in, they also get oils from their preen gland that they preen with that smooth their feathers down and condition them. So it's basically bird lotion or bird conditioner that comes preloaded in a little gland on their backs. So, like, especially ducks or geese, you'll see them throw their head back and, like, rub it against their back, and then they start pulling on their feathers. That's because they went and got that oil from the gland on their back, and then are running it through their various other feathers. So all birds have that. It's various sizes, depending on the bird. So waterfowl tend to have really huge preen glands because they have to have more, they have to work harder to keep their feathers in nice condition because they're in water all the time. This little guy has really nice prominent ones. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a particular reason why a button quail would, or if that's just weird luck. But the other thing that the preen glands tell me is that I don't go any farther than that. We're now down onto the bones that hold its tail on, and so I actually don't take the preen glands with me. I'm going to get all that oil out, but then leave the glands behind on the tail, and they offer support. But I have to make sure not to leave that oil behind because the oil will go rancid and be horribly grody. And this is gross enough as it is. I don't need to make that worse. So all I need to do is slice across my preen glands, flip my scalpel over, and then start squeezing all that goo out. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. This... Oh, gross. Okay. It didn't... Oh, it smells funny. Ooh, okay. How do I describe this smell? Dog breath? I don't know. It's not good. Okay, you can kind of see that there's chunkos on here. That's not normally what happens when I squeeze a preen gland. Usually it comes out as a beautiful lotion. It looks like something you would actually want to massage into your skin. This does not look like that. This is some sort of creepy powder. Chardon Mom, as far as I know, that's not true. For one thing, many baby ducks are precocial, so they're able to take care of themselves pretty much right off the bat. And many of them actually do get in the water and swim immediately. Most duck waterproofness is actually from their feather structure. So on the microscopic level, it's not about the oils. The oils help, but they're not the main thing. So I don't know for sure. I would have to look that up and get more information, but I believe that is not true. Or at least it's not universally true. So more research is necessary. Good question, though. But yeah, I actually was reading something a while ago that scientists, of course, love biomimicry and trying to figure out how wild animals do a thing so that humans can do that thing too. And one of those things is being waterproof, because everybody wants, the perfect rain jacket or whatever. And they found out that ducks are basically waterproof because of the structure of their feathers, which is really hard to mimic. So it's not like we can just recreate the oil and put it on our clothes. But I know, those children's books, I tell you. Science progresses and they don't. They just sit on your shelf and remain the same. And again, that might be true for different species. There are a lot of ducks in the world. So, I saw a great David Attenborough nature show where they had baby ducks that from the moment they hatch, because they live on these really steep mountainsides with lots and lots of little swift-flowing cold rivers and waterfalls, the baby ducks are unsinkable. So they have to go in the water because that's where their parents are, and you can't really avoid it. And you just watch them get utterly swamped. They're going through these rapids, and it's these poor little ducks, and they just pop around like corks, and it's very, very cute. Whereas wood ducks take a while. Wood ducks sit in the nest for a couple days before they pop out, kind of famously. So maybe that's a wood duck thing? Again, further research. Ooh, I'm afraid that Henry and the duck and I don't know each other well enough. I believe he was very cute, though. So, alright, well, I've got the preen glands cleaned out. They were super gross, and I don't know why. So you see those little beans are gone. I've squeezed out all of their horrible, chunky, weird, stinky insides. Yeah, it's hard. This was not a healthy bird, which I knew. So, there you go. Okay, so now I've got to get this base off. My bird's drying out, but it shouldn't be too bad. So it's, again, the trick of leaving enough in that the tail feathers don't just come falling out, but also taking enough off that I'm not leaving tissue there to rot, because the whole point of taxidermy is to get rid of all the things that are going to rot and go bad. Wow, yeah, his tail is weird. Okay, I think I know where I'm going. So, cool tip on this, always have the body hanging down so you don't cut through its intestines and have them drip on your hand, because, ew, no one needs that in their day. So I'll just go through here. Okay. So I've got my entire little body out. There it is. Yeah, that's all covered in wood shavings. There. So that's the entirety of its torso. Done. Now I've got the end of the tail here with just weird bits, so I'm going to clean this up just a smidgy. I have heard Lovecraft Country is good, so you may need to reach out to Reed to see if there's a secret voice chat. That is relevant to my interests. Man, this guy smells bad. Yeah, so it's now a continuation of the smell of pigeon combined with, like, weird dog breath smell. Not my favorite. I hope that's helpful for your viewing enjoyment. Let's see. Oh, there's his vent. I'm not going to hold his butt up to the camera. You guys can just figure that out on your own. I think there's a limit to scientific value. Okay. So I've got that loose. Okay, and then I do want this part to dry off, and so I'm just going to, like, dip that right in my shavings. Add a little more. If I was doing a bigger bird, I would actually add borax to this end to keep it as dry as possible. This guy's so little, I'm not going to worry about that. So I can pop that back into shape. There's cute little tail back out. Button quail have cute little tails. Like, that's it. It's just a teeny weeny little tail. They don't have the big flight feathers on their tails because they're not gonna fly. They can sort of fly. They hop really well. But they don't really fly with any elegance. I have seen them get up to places they shouldn't, but it's kind of like chickens. Chickens can fly, but not elegantly. All right, so now I've gone all the way down to the base of the bird, and now I'm going to go back up and get all the things I left for later. So I cut them off at the knees, the wings, and the neck, so now I have to go through and do detail cleaning. So next up is an adorable drumstick, and so I obviously want those big leg muscles out. And so I will skin farther down here. I don't have to skin out his entire leg. Actually, let me get a bird foot out for you. Okay, so them crazy bird feet, right? Like, that's nuts. I am not gonna try and skin those individual toes. These crazy dinosaur feet. That's nuts. I'm not doing it. I don't have to. It's basically just leathery tissue and tendons at that point. Anybody who's ever eaten chicken feet, it's basically leathery tissue and tendons. And so I don't have to skin that out. I need the drumsticks out. I need that big calf muscle, you know. I've already taken his thighs out. They're still attached to the body. So this is calf. This is knee, ankle. So you can see where bendy. So that's his ankle. Which, by the way, I will say this every single time I'm doing a project like this. Birds do not have reversed knees. We need to remove that term from the public consciousness. There's no such thing as a reverse knee, except in weird medical cases, which obviously happen. They have ankles and knees, and their knees go in the exact same direction as a standard human knee. So what you're seeing when they're walking backward is actually their ankle, and that whole structure that goes from the bendy part down to the ground is their foot, and they walk predominantly on their toes. So reverse knee, not a thing. There, hopefully you learned something. Okay, so now I have to get this meat off, and so all I have to do is kind of pinch around the skinny part. And it's a calf, so it's bigger at one end, it's little at the other, down by the ankle. So all I have to do is cut his tendons off. Do birds have dog legs? Yeah, no, same as dogs. Yeah, so birds, in fact, do have dog legs. Good observation, absolutely. Again, not reverse knees. See? Putting it together. Learning a thing. Woo! We're sciencing! It's good. Alright, cutting the rest of the tendons. Oh, I missed. Wow, this one. Okay, well, actually, here you can. I don't know how well you can see this tendon. That's a tendon. They're silvery little things when they're raw. Again, if you ever cut up raw chicken, same stuff, you'll see it. Totally not interesting in that way. And then all you have to do is just slide that meat up and off, and then kind of rip it off the top. Blap. And I very much want to leave the knob of bone on the end. So, you know, and again, you can imagine eating chicken legs, or depictions of bones always have like a weird knob on the end. That's really useful in my case because that keeps me from poking myself. Bird bones are hollow, and so if I cut through the bone or break the bone, it's effectively like a hypodermic needle, and I could poke myself. Not that I've done that. So I'm not gonna... I like having this end on here because it actually protects me, and it also protects the skin. It just makes it less likely that as I put them back together, its own leg bone isn't going to come shooting out through the side of the leg. Which no one wants. That's like real bad. I'm grabbing a few little morsels of extra meat that I'm noticing on here. Morsel, of course, is a scientific term. Okay, so I'm going to pop his foot back right side out. I usually don't keep parts inside out if I don't have to because they dry out faster. So, there we go. So, there's one little foot done. Get the other one. Oh yeah, he's starting to dry out. It's a weird push-pull because I don't want it sticky and wet and drippy and grody because that's nasty and slimy, and so I have the wood shavings to try and reduce that. But on the other side, I don't want it to be super dry or the skin turns to parchment, literally, and rips. So, yeah, you have to, like, keep it at just the right moisture level. And you just do that by feel. Alright, so other leg bone. Gotta get that guy out. Yes, dispelling common knowledge is something I do professionally. It's amazing how much common knowledge is wrong. If you see a baby bunny, you can put it back in the nest and its mother will come back and take care of it. If you see a baby bird that fell out of its nest, you can pick it up in your stinky human hand, rub it all over your face if you really want to, put it in the bird's nest, and mom will come back and take care of it. So there. Screw those myths. Please save little animals that need to be saved. Because let me tell you, rabbits are stupid and birds don't have much of a sense of smell. And all of them care about their babies. Like, that's the thing I hate about that myth the most. Like, well, there's my baby, but he smells vaguely funny, so I hate him now. Like, there are times and places that sort of thing can come into play, but it's pretty rare because they have a very strong motivation to take care of their offspring. So, alright. So this other leg, whoop, get that off. Man, that camera never shaped up. Okay, I will... I'll take a break once I get the limbs out, so before I do the head, and readjust the camera so that that other one is being cooperative. But hopefully you guys can see enough. I don't know if you want to see everything, but as long as you guys can see enough that it is interesting, that's what I'm going for. Okay, so I got that limb pretty clean. Put that guy back. Okay, so you can kind of see now that he's very floppy because, of course, there's basically no bones. There are, again, the bone is down here in these little yellow parts of his feet. I didn't screw with that because I don't have to. But the rest of this is now just mushy skin. I respect that entirely. The nice thing about Twitch is it's so easy to just do this on audio, so you can still be, you know, you can look up if you want, but you don't have to. Whereas if I'm sitting at like a desk and you walk up while I'm doing this live, it's a little harder to be distanced. So pros and cons. Yep, that's okay. Okay, so I'm up to a wing. Okay, so you can see adorable tip of his wing, and again, here's his little wrist. I'm gonna skin. Let me pull this out. So there's that beautiful wing. I'm going to skin this guy's wing up to the wrist. So if you think about, like, my arm, I'm going up to here, so that means I have to skin all of this and all of this. But I'm actually leaving behind some of the bones that are useful for stuff later. I'm kind of going on autopilot and doing what I'm really familiar with here, because what I usually do is study skins. But in this particular case, this one will be mounted eventually. But I'm still going to start the way I know best, and later when I'm doing other mounts, I might skin them out differently. But today I'm just doing what's familiar. Is anybody actually watching? Is anybody looking at the gross bits? I'm glad you guys are listening. Does it help when I give you descriptions of smell? Does that enrich your experience without having to look at the gross? Or is that just weird? It might just be weird, and I would accept that. All right. Yeah, no, Claire, I know you got my back. Okay, that's understandable. Pretend noses, internet superhighway noses. Alrighty. So while we've been talking specifics, I got most of his wing out. And so you can see that little joint. That's reasonable. Okay, so shoulder, elbow, wrist is over here. So you can kind of see that bend. This part where all this white tissue is where all of his flight feathers are. And so birds' flight feathers are embedded in their bones. That's how they get strength. If the flight feathers that actually lift up the entire animal were flopping loose in their skin, it wouldn't work. They just flop around. And so they're actually embedded in little pockets in their bones so that gives it strength. So when they pump down, the feathers don't just flop all over the place. Nice. Okay, cool. And again, cooking and taxidermy go together great. So I totally love that. So I'm going to be popping the bones loose along the bottom of his wing. This probably won't make any noise. On big birds, you can hear it. It totally, goes on through, and it's really cool. This guy's so little. I can hold it here. There's a bit of a noise. A little bit there. Yeah, Clara, I know, right? Doing this through video is just not the same. Nice! Okay, good. I'm glad you guys could hear that. Again, with as many sensory things as we can do. We're not doing taste. Chicken, I guess. So I've ripped those loose. And if you're eating chicken wings, for those who eat chicken wings, you can actually see where the feathers attach. There's, on the chicken wings that have two bones, on one side you can actually see a line of dots, and that's where the feathers used to be. So next time you're eating chicken wings, if you want to think about the live bird, which I think is actually good for you, but that's me, you can think about where its wing feathers have been attached. Okay, so there's a little wing. So again, shoulder, elbow, and now I'm at the wrist. So I've got this whole little apparatus here. I'm going to leave behind just... Actually, I'm going to see if I can leave behind both bones in the forearm. I'm going to completely take off the upper arm. I don't need it. But I'll see if I can leave behind both down here. For steady skins, I always take out one of the bones. But since I want to mount this guy later, I'll see if I can leave both. And so just like the leg, I have to cut through just the tendons. It's a little hard because, again, it's a forearm, so there's two bones there. You got your radius and your ulna. And on humans, your radius and your ulna are roughly the same size. Birds, the radius is foolishly small, and the ulna is huge and beefy and slightly curved, and that's where the feathers attach. So they're very distant or different shapes and sizes. Once I get these cleaned out, I think you guys will be able to see that on this guy. He's big enough. Gross. Let's see. I'm rubbing wood shavings against the bone to kind of add friction and give me a little bit of grip to pull the extra tissue off. And I'm just using my thumbnail to scrape it all off. Thumbnails are great. Your fingernails are of a hardness where they are, of course, harder than the skin, but softer than the bones. And so on a hardness scale that, I forget what fingernail is, that I knew this at one point. Anyway, but it's really, really useful because I'm not going to damage the bones, probably, but I have to do, I'm close enough with the skin I can generally not damage it, but if I really need to rip through it, I can. Whereas steel implements obviously are of a much higher hardness level. So, are there circumstances where one wants to remove both bones? Yeah, I like leaving the bones behind because it gives me a pre-made structure. And so even if I'm adding wires and wood and things like that to give it a new structure, I can just lash the pre-existing bone to it. You would most likely want to remove the bones if they are damaged or if they're very large, because you don't want a big greasy bone holding a lot of moisture and oil inside your body. And so you would remove the bones to clean it out more thoroughly, and then you can get everything dry and degreased. So for a little dude like this, he's so small, it's not going to leave anything behind. So I don't have to worry about the small bit of oil and moisture. Because, of course, they've got the inside of your bone is where your marrow is, and it's a very complicated blood factory in there. But this is just so little, I'm not worried. Let's see. Yeah, and if the ulna comes out, it's harder to line up the feathers. You can do it, but... Okay, so I've got the radius and ulna. So the radius is the little top guy, the straight one, and the ulna is this much bigger, curved, beefy guy below there. So this was the elbow and then wrist. So you guys can see that. Oh, different being the bone marrow and the making of blood. Different, yes, but it still happens. So there are air pockets. So again, if I cut the end off the bone, it's a hypodermic needle and it'll poke me. So there is actually an inner channel in there, but so it is inherently drier than like a mammal bone. So yes, definitely. But they still have to make their blood somewhere. So the structures are in there. If you ever, again, are cooking, you can just like hack open a chicken bone and you'll see it in there where it's definitely, the bone itself is very much a tube, although actually you get that with mammal bones, but instead of having the really dense inner core, it's filled with lots of pockets of air and is almost a little spongier. But yeah, you gotta make blood somewhere. Okay, so I've got that wing. And so now I'm gonna pull the wing out correctly. And you can kind of see how it's still wing-shaped because I did leave that ulna in place, and so the feathers just sort of rest on top of it. And I didn't screw with the hand at all. So this structure, after the wrist, distal to the wrist, is the hand. Does it have fingers? No, definitely not. There is sort of a thumb. Like, I can actually feel it on him, but you guys wouldn't be able to see it. There is a projection off of their wrist, which is more or less a thumb. And the thumb allows for really fine flight control in more flighted birds. Little guys like this, it's just, a remnant from previous iterations that flew. But yeah, so they do actually use their thumb for fine motor control. The rest of it has been fused and bones have been lost over the eons since they were quadrupedal reptiles. But, they've had millions of years to do that. And they didn't need no digits, so okay. Birds can count to 4, I guess is what we've determined. Okay, so I'm going to do the other wing. And I'll go a little quicker. Yeah, I'm so bummed on that second camera. Once I get this wing out, I'm going to wash my hands and adjust the camera. But I don't really want to touch it. So I'm trying to hold things up so you guys can see it from this face cam. I'm so bummed because, of course, during setup, this camera was great. And like if I hold my hand right up here, it's totally focusing up here. But for some reason, it's lost my workspace. So not what I wanted. But unfortunately, when my hands are covered in raw bird, I can fiddle around a lot less than when I'm doing my other projects. So one more wing to go, and then I will fix that. Don't worry, I want to make sure that when I skin its head, you guys can see that. because that part is really weird and cool. Alright, I'm gonna pop all the feathers loose again, so I'm gonna hold that up to the microphone so you guys can hear as all those feathers come loose from the ulna, because personally, I find that part very satisfying. But let me get it started. Alright, you guys ready? There we go. Delightful. So now I've got that whole wing. There, here we go. So, again, we've got shoulder, elbow, wrist. And so all of the skin is hanging off at the end of the wrist. Oh, I tell you guys, that sound, it's so satisfying every time. If you're doing something like a woodpecker, like a much bigger bird, it's pop, 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 and you have to do them individually. Once you get up to hawks, I usually need to add a tool to help give me leverage to knock them off. Little guy like this, my thumbnail is fine, but... Okay, so there, I've got that really nice little wing loose. So I'm going to continue to try and preserve both bones in there. I really like having both for this. So I just have to get the tendons cut, and then I'll get the meat off. Yes, so again, the sound as I do that is the flight feathers being broken loose from the ulna. Flight feathers on the bird's wings are embedded in bone to give the bird power and lift. And they're actually embedded in the tail, too. That's one of the reasons I had to leave so much tissue behind when I was on that step. The very bottom of a bird, the very bottom of their tail is called the pygostyle. Again, for anybody who's ever cooked chicken or turkey at home, you know how there's a little, like, perfectly triangular little blob of meat and bone for the tail that you kind of don't want to eat because it sort of squigs you out, but it is actually food. Good for making stock. The pygostyle is this triangle that all the feathers then radiate out from in a perfect little flying V flight pattern. It's very, very cool. And so that I just leave the whole pygostyle in when I'm skinning them so that it actually can support the whole thing. I don't even know what I said that you thought was Pope's nose, so I will just say that you were probably right and move on. Okay. So I've got... Yeah, actually this tissue came off nicer this time. I think it's starting to dry out a little bit, which in this case helped me. So, and actually I didn't do this with the other wing, but so you guys can see, I've got the radius and ulna down here, and then this is the humerus. So I'm not going to keep the humerus. This is just a stick. I can really easily mimic that with wire or a skewer and some string, so I'll take that guy off. Let's see. Okay. So I'm just clipping through the top here. And again, I don't want to actually cut through the bones. Bird bones are very sharp when you cut through them because they are hollow. So I try to cut between the joints, which means I'm really good at Thanksgiving at this point. Like, I can disjoint a turkey real fast, and it's really satisfying. Invite me over for food. Okay, so I've got that little wing cleaned up. So that guy is ready to go, so I'll put that wing... Actually, I'm going to make it a little moister. Alright, so there we go. So I have the bird now entirely skinned out except for his head. So I'm going to take a 5-minute break, wash my hands, adjust this useless thing so that when I do the head, it's actually in focus. Heads are cool. You get to watch me, like, cut eyeballs loose and skin ears, and also, because, yes, this guy has ears. So I will see you guys in 10 minutes. Well, not 10 minutes, but 5 minutes, hopefully less than that if I can get my stupid camera to work with me. So I will be back in a moment. Oh, also, for anybody who is curious, I have wrapped my mouse in cellophane, which is why this part I can do. I just didn't think to wrap the camera in cellophane. Anyway, all right, back in a minute. Bye! Okay. Man, it's still not focused. I had to turn this back on so I could see at all. So I have the camera wrapped in a small bit of cellophane so I can screw with it at all. Okay, that's in focus. Oh, maybe I'll make this shorter. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, opinion, dear audience. Let me move my the star of the show. Is this in focus? Does this look better? Because stuff's gonna get super growed and I don't want you guys to miss it. So, keep my stuff over here. Give myself a little more room. Alright, well. I'm gonna carry on. Oh, okay, thank you. Alright, great. Let me know if it fuzzes out again and if I don't notice it. But I now have a small piece of cellophane on my camera so I can touch it without getting E. coli or salmonella all over my stuff. Which is, you know, generally part you want to avoid. Alright, thanks guys, I really appreciate it. Yeah, the head is not for the squeamish, so if you're definitely not into this, now's a good time to go to just audio. If you're super into this is so cool. Heads are rad. Heads are complicated. We use them for all sorts of important things. So what I'm going to do is I have my little, for anybody who's just tuning in, so this is a button quail, also known as a king quail or a Chinese painted quail. These are a common bird in aviculture, so people have them as pets. They are beloved, adorable little things. They run around, look like little Easter eggs. They eat cheap food. They're just, and you can breed them into all sorts of pretty colors, like this one. So a wild king quail would not have exactly this patterning. It would probably be darker. But, and again, this one, I might actually have to cut that open and see if I can sex it. I'm not sure if this one's male or female. It does have a little bit of the white throat, which usually indicates male. But the rest of the coloring is so female. So, and of course, if it's a bird that was bred to be pretty, humans do all sorts of weird things with the color combinations, so it's harder to know. And this is definitely a juvenile. It's molting like crazy. Just overall, the structure of the bird is thinner. So, yeah, you could have a non-conforming quail. Actually, I have known a couple of gender non-conforming quails. There's been some female... It's actually... This happens across the bird world. Older female birds, their hormone levels will start to change as they age, and so they end up having more testosterone and less estrogen, and they'll take on male plumage. And so you'll have a bird walking by that looks exactly like red male cardinal, bright red male cardinal. And no, that's a girl if you cut her open and look at her bits. Button quail, I knew a button quail who started out with male plumage, and I didn't cut him open, so I didn't confirm this, but I'm going to assume that he was originally male, or at least had a very high testosterone level. And then when he was really old, he lost all of his male plumage except for one adorable little white feather on his neck, and he looked like a little old lady. So it kind of happens to humans. Women grow mustaches. You know, there's jokes about older men, some of which are in poor taste, but there it is. And yeah, so gender nonconforming and or gender fluid birds is a thing. Okay, so I'm turning the head inside out. And so this, to reorient everybody, is the base of the neck. So I have his head upside down. There's his little head. And I'm skinning from the base of the neck up towards the chin. And the next milestone I guess I'm looking for is its ears. So I'll just zoop. There we go. Get that skull out. So you can see how easily that tissue just slides off. It's a good quality little specimen. He looks great. Although his trachea is sticking out very prominently. My poke and stick. So this little tube here is the trachea. Let me hold that a little closer. I don't know if you guys can see the tracheal rings. there are rings of cartilage in your trachea. So, of course, if you touch your own throat, you can feel those rings. There's like a bumpiness. You have rings of cartilage, same stuff your nose is made out of, or your ears, that rings through that tube because you breathe through it. And you don't want it to just accidentally close. There are conditions where that happens, and that usually is pretty fatal. And so you actually have these rings of cartilage in your trachea to keep it open, so even when your whole body is relaxed or you're under mild duress, your windpipe stays open. Whereas his esophagus is in this mess somewhere, and that's just a mushy tube. It can close, it can open, whatever. It's mushy. Generally, the pressure of your food will open it up. It doesn't need the cartilage to keep it open. But trachea are always really obvious. Swan trachea are huge, or any like those big-necked water birds that are just ginormous. So when you're skinning them, you can actually like skin out the individual rings. You don't really need to. I don't know of a lot of applications for that, but you can, and it's kind of neat. So, and actually, if you find the carcass of a dead swan, a lot of times in the bones, you clearly find the tracheal rings. They're in there just with the bones because they're so big they don't really decompose easily. Okay, so I've got his head very loose. So to reorient again, this is now the top of his head. This is the back of the head. This is the stump of the neck. And this is the beginning of an eye and the ear. So he's basically looking in this direction. He's looking towards my finger. Not that he's looking at anything, but, So I gotta find his ears. So birds have ears. They sing a lot, so obviously they kind of expect to be heard. They don't have external ears. So we have the big fleshy external guys. They don't bother with that. They can hear just fine without that. And so, but they do have a hole into their head. So if you think about your own ear, there's skin going inside your head, in through your ear. So if you jam your pinky finger into your ear to scratch it, you're touching skin. And so there is actually a tube of skin inside this head that you can sort of see here. Oh, I forgot to turn this light on. Let me see if this helps. There, hopefully that'll give you guys a little more light as I'm in here. So I need to just pinch around that, and I'm going to pull his ear inside out. There, you can kind of see that opened right up. I think I might have actually torn the tissue a little. Yeah, a little bit. I didn't get a perfect inside-out ear, which is fine, but it's satisfying if you do. Alright, so there, you can see, boop, this is the opening into his ear. So just like in our skulls, there you can kind of see my forceps are in there, it actually is an opening that leads to your brain. So your ear bones vibrate against your nerves, they stimulate your brain, you hear noises. So birds that have that exact same structure, they just don't have the outer part. And you can find a bird's ear. Like if you have a friendly willing bird, which, pet parrot, whatever, you can actually move the feathers aside and you can see the big dang hole in the side of their head, and it's just like a pit. It's very strange. And then the bird usually looks at you with reproach because you were messing around with its ear, and who does that? So, okay, so that is one ear out. Let's get the other one. So, I can grip this. I was really hoping to get like a whole ear. It's always really satisfying to do. It's not like the amount of tissue I'm leaving behind is not important because it's not like you'll see the damaged skin, but I feel cool if I pull it all out. That matters to me. There we go. I got more of it that time. So you guys, there, if I hold it up like that, you can kind of see this little structure. So that's the inside out ear from this little bird. All right. Next up, I am looking for eyeballs. So if you think about your own head structure, ear, moving on towards eyes. Birds have obnoxiously humongous eyes. Unrealistically ridiculous, strange flying saucer eyeballs. So if you think about a mammal eye, or, a human eye if you want to keep it really narrow, and familiar, they're jelly balls. It's basically round. It's got, the iris and the pupil on one side and an optic nerve on the back, and it's basically a ball full of goo. Birds aren't like that. Well, a little bit. There's some similarities. Birds' eyes are shaped like flying saucers that are black, and most of it is hidden behind the skin of their face. So, let me actually... Well, I mean, you guys saw his little face. He had little tiny bird eyes. They were cute. You could, little beady little eyes. You're going to be weirded out by just how huge and gross his entire eyeball is. We can already see a bunch of it. So you can see the edge here of the bones around the eye. And this darkness here is already the eyeball. And I haven't even finished skinning it yet. So a lot of their eye is behind the skin of their face. It is completely covered by skin. It is not used for the intake of light. And bird eyeballs have bones in them. Mammals are weird. We are one of the few groups of animals that don't have bones in our eyeballs. Pretty much everybody else does. So it's us, it's mammals, and it's crocodilians who do not have bones in their eyeballs. Everybody else has bones in their eyeballs. It's called a sclerotic ring. It circles around the part of their eye that they see out of. So reptiles, amphibian, yeah, I know, right? Reptiles, amphibians, fish, everybody else has them. We don't. So we're the odd ones out here. And so I'll show that in a minute. And you'll be weirded out. So as I'm pulling on this here, you can kind of see there's this lighter area. So you can see the yellow skin. That's pretty familiar at this point. But when I lift up, there's this kind of bubble of lighter colored tissue and then that black eyeball. I'm going to slice through that and slice his eyeball free. Because if you think about it, your own eyeball, you can't just reach around your eye and poke your brain. There is tissue there. Mammals are so retro. And so you actually have to cut eyelids loose. So, let's see. Make sure that's in the camera view. And just zoop, zoop, zoop. Alright. Yeah, you can see that. So I have to cut all the way around the eye. This part's really easy to screw up, and then you get really weird eyes on your taxidermy, and you don't want that. So, because, of course, humans care about faces, and so if you mess up the face, everybody sees it. If you mess up their butt, no one sees it. Well, there's that guy. Okay. So, that is a little bird eyeball. There's a little grody piece of tissue. Let me get that off. So yeah, so you can now see his entire huge, disgusting black eyeball. So all of that is eyeball. If I do this, I don't know how much this is going to pick up on this camera. But there's the eye that you could see. You see that weird pulsating middle bit? That is the visible eye. So that's the part I cut around that ring to release the eyelid. That's the only part that touches air. That's the only part that you can see. And that's where light enters the bird. The reason why I could do this, and there's that creepy little bubble that pops up and down, that's the sclerotic ring holding the structure up. So the ring of bone is visible there, and that is giving the structure to the eyeball. And so I am going to get that eyeball out, and then you guys can really see how weird they are. And like, a quail eye is nothing compared to an owl eyeball. Owl eyeballs look like cannons, I guess. Almost like a cartoon cannon. I will never, ever have an owl available to taxidermy on screen. The chance of finding one that's somehow not a protected species is pretty low. So I can't show you one on here. But take my word for it. If you get a chance to see an owl eyeball, they're really strange. And in a living owl, you can see the back of its eyeball through its ear. Anyway. Strange facts. You can actually Google that. Although I think a lot of the pictures online are of a dead owl, but the point stands. I'm going to actually have to cut some of this tissue to get this eye out. Yeah. All right, let's see if I can grab that optic nerve. So what I've done is I cut the tissue looser around the outside of the eye, because again, there's actually a lot of anchors holding your eye in place. They're loose, so your eye can look around, but you don't want it to be popping out. Now, that does happen. There are people who get injuries that breaks the eye, the fascia around your eye, and then your eye falls out of your head, but that's generally looked down upon. Yeah, so Clara, you're completely right. Owl feathers around the eyes and ears are so cool because they have discs. Okay, now this is what we're talking about. The facial discs on owls, so if you think of their eyes, they're not only is there a big eye, but then the feathers are kind of a big swoop around their eye. They're facial discs, so I mentioned that they don't have external ears, which there's actually a caveat with that with owls. But anyway, they grow their feathers into this shape that then funnels sound to their ears. So basically their feathers are a feather ear around their eyes. Owls are cool. So, all right, I'm going to grab this little eyeball. So eyeballs, of course, are full of fluid. This is still true for bird eyes as well as human eyes. And so you want to grab the optic nerve and kind of twist it like an apple stem and then pull the whole thing out. But you don't want to grip it too loosely because you don't want to slide it up and then basically squirt like a Go-Gurt, which I've done. So I hopefully won't hit my camera. Or hopefully I won't do that at all. Hopefully I'll get it out correctly. But, you know, so I'm just going to twist that a little bit. Oh, no, that came out great. All right, so there is my little bird eyeball. And so you can see, a lot of people think they kind of look like blueberries. I agree, it totally looks like a blueberry. And it's a dang flying saucer. It's flat, it's black, and if you squeeze it, you can get the little central guy that looks, so I'm going to get a lighter colored bit behind here if I can put its own wing back there. Yeah, so bird eyes. That's what a bird eye is basically always shaped like, unless it's an owl, in which case it's even stranger. They are not round, and they have a ring of bone in the middle. So that said, let's get the other eyeball out. Ooh, I've made a mistake. I was so focused on that the tip of his beak has started to come through his skin. So I just have to pull that back and try not to make that hole bigger. You make little tears, pretty common. That's actually my first tear that I've noticed on this guy. But luckily they're fluffy, and you can kind of get away with a lot. So I'll just try not to make that worse. Good life lesson. When you realize you made a mistake, don't make it worse. Okay, so cutting this other eyeball free. And again, if I lift up here, you can see that kind of pocket of air between the yellowy skin. There's the pocket of air, and then there's the black tissue of the eyeball. There, you can really see that there. And so all I have to do is slice right through that, and that's how I get my the beginning of my eyeball out. It's really important for birds to be able to cut that tissue pretty exactly. You don't want to lose parts of your eyelid, because not only does it look bad, which we care about, but for bird identification, a lot of birds, important modifiers are if they have eye rings and things like that, so you can lose data if you slice that off, and you don't want to fake that. Alright, so I've got that eye now totally free. Actually, no, I was having better luck with the scalpel on this. It really sucks if you pop an eye. It's full of slime, and it gets everywhere. So it's not the end all be all. You can recover from that, but I do not love it. Alright, so I think I've broken enough tissue there. Let's get our eyeball out. And you just grab that optic nerve, give the whole thing a little twist, and pull it loose. Alright, so eyeball number 2, successfully out. And yeah, bird eyeballs. They're weird. They look like blueberries. Blueberry flying saucers. Probably not delicious, although there's a lot of eyeballs you can eat, so I guess I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't eat enough eyes. Okay, so at this point, his head is skinned. So, again, back of the neck, the trachea, you can kind of see how that goes right up to his bottom of his chin, and then head and beak. So, birds and mammals, this step is different. With mammals, you take the whole skull out because it's just, you know, skin on top of bone. Birds have a beak, and so if I skin all the way to the edge of the beak, then I'm going to have a skin with a ginormous hole in it, and the beak goes away with the bones, which is not what I want. And so I want to leave that beak behind. There's a lot of different ways to do this step. People will remove more or less of this head for this step, but what I do know is, of course, anything I leave behind, I want it to be as clean as possible. So I'm going to now get into the realm of brains. So for anybody who is interested in brains, we're there. If you're not interested in brains, now is a great time to make sure that your video is minimized and you're just listening to the audio part. Although honestly, if you made it this far, you might as well stick it out. So I am gonna take the back off of here, but I'm gonna leave a lot of this front part of his head in place. I like having the eye orbits still there because it tells me how big to make the fake eyes. I like having the bridge of the nose here. It shapes towards the head. Whereas as we get back here, this becomes just kind of a generic pellet shape, and it's pretty easy to mimic that with clay or whatever other materials I'm going to do. Also, since we're in the world of interesting facts and dispelling myths, if you are trying to rescue a baby bird, if you want to feed a baby bird that you found that its parents seem to have abandoned, good for you, you're a nice person, don't do it. You'll probably give it pneumonia and kill it because birds breathe out of the bottom of their mouth. We have one giant hole in the back of our mouths that we, you know, if you say ah, you can just see it's a big gaping mess back there that then subdivides into your trachea and your esophagus. So when you swallow, you have mechanisms that close up the right thing so that you swallow your food and don't breathe it. Most of the time. We've all had that day. Birds, the hole that they breathe through is way up here, and the hole that they eat with is way back here. And a lot of people, when they have that cute little eyedropper and they're there to save the baby bird, they take that eyedropper and they jam it right into the very first hole that they can see, which is its breathing hole. Don't feed baby birds. Call a rescue group, call for help. Please do not try to give it an eyedropper because you're really trying to help. That's, again, you're a great person. Good for you. Please rescue animals. But don't aspirate it. Unfortunately, a lot of birds, by the time they make it to the rescuer, when good-hearted people have rescued it and then frickin' killed it by inserting water into its trachea, by the time it gets to the rescue, it has pneumonia and it dies. So if you want to do the right thing, the best thing is to not try to feed a baby bird yourself. Additional thing to learn tonight. Okay, so with that, I'm going to destroy the back of its head. So there's your really logical segue. Alright, so I'm just gonna, you can kind of see how it transitions from being nice dry bird bone into this mushy muscular back thing. I'm just gonna cut all this off. So I just insert my scissors between the jawbone and the palate up into, you can see it right through its eye. And I'm gonna just cut right through the back of its head. Ooh, this is gonna make a noise, so for everybody's benefit, I'm gonna move this over here. You are welcome. And now I'll do the rest of the cutting over here so you can see it. Alright, up we go. And then I'll do that on the other side too. Okay. So right through that eye. And then just cut right through there. Alright. So interestingly, I was speculating that this was a young bird. Its skull is ossified, so I'm not sure now if it's young. We'll see this when I cut all the way through here. But it looks like it has 2 layers of bone in its head, which usually implies that it's an older bird. So my forensics may be off, which is okay. Ain't mad. Alright, so I've cut an adorable little window in the back of its head and cut most of his palate loose. So there's a lot of soft tissue under your chin. Alright, so I'm just going to crack the back of his head right off. Here we go. And can I get the tongue out? I will answer your bone question in a minute. Blah. Blurk. Okay. So first of all, these are brains. Especially when I'm doing this for a live audience, people are super excited to see the brains. Brains look like nothing. It is pink snot. It is just mush. It kind of, you know, yeah, it's just pink snot. So, sorry, bird brains don't look like tiny zombie brains. Sorry. Alright, so, okay. So, not here to answer your question. Why does an older bird have 2 layers of bone? Fantastic question. Birds, especially flighted birds, and that actually might be why that's different here, because these guys aren't primarily strong flyers, but like little perching birds, robins, sparrows, whatever, they only grow 1 layer of bone right when they're born, and then their skull hardens over the first year of their life. So you know how in a human baby there's the mushy part in the top of their head that you're not supposed to touch when they're first born? That is so that the head can fit through the birth canal in a human, and presumably other mammals. I guess I don't know a ton about that. But with birds, they want to be light, and they want to put all of their energy towards different things. So at first, they're not bothering with building a skull that's super strong. Instead, they want to be able to fly as soon as possible. So all of their resources, as the baby bird is eating food and turning it into bird, goes towards being able to go from helpless, pathetic little nest thing to flying and being able to forage. And then it grows the stronger skull. And so it's a risk-reward balance, which means that when little year-old birds smack into your window during migration, they're much more likely to die than the adults, which is super sad, because their heads are mushy. And so you can actually see the layer of bone as it's growing in. This is not the case for all types of birds, though. So birds of prey, they use their faces to kill things and rip things apart. So they're born with 2 layers of bone. Ducks tend to have both layers of bone. You know, they're basically, it's little perching birds. I don't know a ton about quail, and I especially don't know a ton about Asian quail. And so the fact that this guy is fully ossified might just be totally standard for their species. But, you know, it's fun to speculate. Alright, so there, I got his tongue out. I'll move his little body out of the way so you guys can see this. A lot of goosh attached to it. I wonder if I can actually get the glottis open on this. Maybe? It's a bit juicy. Okay, so let me start off. So there, oh yeah, you can kind of see it in the feed. Nice. Okay, so there's the tip of his tongue, and my pointing stick here. You can see this little slit-looking opening here. That's the opening to the trachea. And so, if I pull this muscle out of the way, you guys can see the trachea hanging down there. And actually, if I just rudely stick this in the glottis, that just goes right into his trachea. And so that's the tube that people tend to put eyedroppers of fluid into baby birds. So again, please don't feed baby birds. Please talk to a wildlife rehabber. It's a sad case. So yeah, little pointy bird tongue. And bird tongues are pointy. I get a lot of kids who will ask me why they're pointy, and the answer is the same reason why your tongue is round. Your tongue is an oblong round shape because that's the shape of your jaw, and so it nestles perfectly into your jaw. Bird faces are pointy. They have beaks, and so they have a little pointy tongue because it fits in their little pointy beak. And it does change, so like duck tongues are rounded because they have generally rounded bills. Okay. And apparently they're delicious. big Southeast Asian thing. A friend of mine just loves them and raves about them whenever she goes to, like, Thailand. Fried duck tongue. So, okay. So I have cut out a portion of the back of his little noggin. There's some more brains, so I'm going to get those brains out. Bird brains are just snot. If you're really lucky, there's a membrane on the outside of your brain, which probably has a name, and I am not aware of what that is. And if you can grab the edge of that membrane, you can kind of pull the whole snot ball out. But in this case, I'm not finding it. Oh, wait, maybe I got it? Haha! Well, maybe. Sort of. I found it, but it's tearing. So anyway. It's just snot. Anyway, yeah, like, brains, guys. It's snot. So I think of bird brains less as being small and more of them being boogerish. Boogerish is, of course, a technical term. Yuck. I got most of it out. Working on birds that hit windows is a real pain in the butt because they die of concussions, and so they literally bruise their brain. And so not only are you trying to get smooshy, mushy brains out, but those smooshy, mushy brains have been liquefied, at least in some part, by the impact that killed them. So it's really gross to get those out sometimes. Oh, that's another weird cultural thing. For some reason, people often say that when a bird runs into a window, it breaks its neck. No, man, traumatic brain injury. You know, if you smack your face against something hard, you could break your neck. And I think we've had 2 birds that the speculation was the neck was probably broken, but it also had a concussion. So, like, traumatic brain injury is what you want to avoid when you're running into buildings. Don't run into buildings. Or other things that may cause you to have traumatic brain injury. Hey man, I've met some dumb, I would say maybe pugs have bird brains, because they're pretty stupid. But I've met some pretty smart dogs. I think they more suffer from the same thing that this little bird did, where they've been bred by humans for so long that they got weird. We do weird things to the animals that we love. Okay, so I've got most of the brain out of there. So now I'm just going to tidy up this skull, so you can see, like, I've got this, like, bone fragment just hanging off here. Meh, get rid of that. I don't need this to be perfect. I need it to just hold a basic shape. And so right now, it's kind of a bird mask. You know, open in the back, it's got the basic shape. I'm just going to clean off some of these extra kind of wet areas. You can see that there's still that darker color from the muscle down here, so I'm going to trim off some of that. I want to leave the jaw hinge in place, just because that keeps the jawbone on. But, you know, get at least some of this off. I gotta leave a lot behind, though. And that's another one where borax or other desiccants can be really helpful, because they get that stuff out of there. Or they don't remove it, rather, but they dry it out for you. Yeah, I don't want to take too much off. This is a pretty small bird, actually. Ooh, and then you can see there that shiny layer of bone that's directly between its eyes. I usually cut that out, because even though I'm going to stuff this full of clay when I'm reshaping the bird, I find those pieces just get in the way and they're kind of confusing. So I am going to just snip that out. I don't like having the rough edges, you know. It's easier to get it down to a really basic form that then I build up again, where I leave just the really important structures but take out all the extra kind of muss and grime. Bird's not using them. I'm not using them. They don't need to stay. That's not bad, though. Okay, so now I have a empty little bird head with a big hole in the back of his head, but that's okay. I'll fill that out in with clay later. So now I'm going to turn him right side out. So here's the big reveal. So of course now I have this really weird looking creature with this horrible tube neck thing and a blob of whatever happening down here. Pretty gross. And now I'm going to make it look like a bird again. I'm glad you liked that. Thank you, Chardon Mom. Yeah. It's one of those like, oh, I never thought of it. But yeah, you just think of a tongue as being a tongue, and especially if you grew up with other animals with rounded faces, so dogs and cats, their tongues look fairly similar to ours. I mean, cat tongues are weird texturally, but they're the same shape. But yeah, bird tongues. Match the face. Okay, so pop this guy right back out. So I had already poked his beak partially through his neck, so of course I don't want to repeat that mistake. I have done that. It's very confusing. But I can see just the beginning of his adorable little beak sticking on through there, so I can know I can kind of safely pull him right out. There we go. Hey, look, it's suddenly a bird, right? Remember when that didn't look like a bird? It was a horrible inside-out alien thing? Let me just tighten his face a little bit. As you do. Alright. And so now it's starting to look like a quail again. So this is an entirely empty quail skin except for the bones and the feet, which again, I'm not going to take those out. I don't need to. They will actually benefit me to leave that in. So I have managed to keep him really clean. This was a nice little specimen. So I've got just really lovely plumage, very soft. Yes, it's as soft as it looks. That one's always tough when I'm talking to people in person because everybody wants to touch it. Please don't touch it. It is raw bird meat, so salmonella and E. coli are a thing. I also don't want your disgusting human hands on my stuff. But yes, he is exactly as soft as he feels, or as he looks. The smell at this point, we're still getting a little bit of pigeon smell, like when you come off the subway, but all of the funky dog breath odors have subsided, so I'm really happy about that. So at this point, skinning is done. This is now a fully skinned bird pelt. And so what I'm going to do is next Saturday, assuming that my supplies arrive, I'm going to start mounting this guy. I actually might not have the skin out the entire time I'm doing the mounting. Or the entire time next week. That might be a third round, because basically creating the mount for this guy, he is now totally flat. This is a flat O bird. I have taken away everything that gave him structure and made him a functional small animal. That is now, this thing. That has all of my structure. That has all the bones. That's what defined his shape. And so I have to now entirely remake that. And so I'm going to be doing that with, again, assuming my stuff arrives on time, with wire and cotton and cord and things like that to actually make a model of this. This is what I'm trying to model. So I will be keeping this. It's a reference. Like, how big is he? Oh, he's about this big, So this is really useful when I'm moving on to the next step. And so I will be keeping this, but I'm not putting this back in the bird. This is trash from that point of view, but it's useful as a reference. So I'm going to, again, he'll actually remain in the freezer while I'm doing that step. The good news is, now that he's so small and I've removed the vast amount of the moisture, thawing him's really fast. And so when I had to thaw the body, I did that. I actually popped him out of the freezer this morning around 10-ish. And he's been sitting on a shelf all day, and he warmed right up. But for just a skin, you can just hold it in your hand, and that's enough to warm it up, just because there's so little water left. So yeah, so that is a thoroughly skinned little dude. I have 2 of these, and so my plan, if I don't get my supplies in time, is next week I will skin the second bird, so it will effectively be the same process. So for anybody who missed any of the steps, assuming maybe I'll just plan on that. You know what? Let's just skin the other bird next week. Let's get them both on the same step, and then I'll make the 2 models at the same time. I might go back on that. I will decide. I've got time. It depends. Let's just say it depends on my stuff arrives. But I do have 1 more bird to skin, and my end goal of all of this is actually to mount both of these birds together as like a little scene or diorama. So again, this bird lived presumably good little life. He was a pet, well taken care of, well fed. Something happened, it died, and now I kind of want to recapture its happy little life with the other bird that it lived with. So yeah, that's the other thing. 2 of these birds died simultaneously. The fact that there's some injury along the back of this guy makes me wonder if maybe they were fighting? I don't know. We'll see if the other bird has damage. The owner doesn't know. She just found them dead in the morning and was very sad. So we will explore that. Okay. I'll totally surprise you guys. Okay, let's not give warning. I will always tell you if it's going to be gross. So there will be the warning, like you can see up here. I'll tell you if it's gross. If I'm doing the modeling, it will not be gross, so I won't have the warning up there. Okay, so I am wrapping up. Does anybody have any final questions? Whether it's from, if you just logged on and you want to know what I'm doing or anything else. Because this is kind of a weird thing with a little dead bird or anything you want to see up close. I still can't believe he's missing an entire toe. Birds are so weird. His nails are really long, too. But when I had a pet cockatiel, I definitely had to trim her little nails. Birds in the wild, they're scratching and stuff. It goes away. But when they live in the cushy lifestyle of a pet, they do tend to get overlong nails. Just like a dog. Dogs will get the horrible ingrown nails if you don't actually trim them. So, okay, guys. I'm not seeing any questions. So reach out to me if you know me on social media. Obviously, you can just find me on there. I keep meaning to create a Discord, so I'll probably do that in the next day or two. So if anybody has any questions, you can find my Discord. That will be posted on my channel. So if you guys enjoyed yourselves, please make sure that you are following me. That will give you warning when I'm doing more of this. I will be doing taxidermy on Saturdays. I cook on Sundays, and I do random whatever on Thursdays. So thanks for hanging out. And I will see everybody next time.